So officially, hi, my name is Gage Purdy.
I'm Crystal McDougall-Purdy. Nice to meet any of you we haven't met.
And we're so happy to have you here today. So I know it'll definitely help us later on because there will be some Q&A. Can we just quickly go around the room and you just be like, hi, I'm blank from blank group if you'd like. So I'm Gage Purdy. Hi, I'm the music director of a whole bunch of choirs up here in Northern California. I won't waste your time. But I'm really glad that you're here. We have actually four of our five co-founders of the Northern California Vocal Arts, NorCal Vocal Arts community. Here we have Jennifer and Amanda, Crystal, and myself. So we're just really glad that you're here for our first ever workshop.
Thank you for being here.
I'm Crystal McDougall-Purdy. I am the artistic director of the Occidental Community Choir, and I'm also a member of the California Rebel Chorale and the Unitarian Universalist Choir.
I'm Rachel, and I'm a member of the Occidental Community Choir.
And I'm Dave, I'm also in the OCC.
And I'm Jerry, another OCC.
And I'm Susie, also in the OCC.
And I'm Linda, OCC, Savannah too.
We paid them all to be here.
What? Get to the back row. Received our.
It's brownies.
You're jumping out.
Hi, I'm Maura, and I am here with the Unitarian Universalist Choir.
And Kate, also with the UCCSR.
There you go.
There you go, UUCSR.
Yes. I'm Christina Soprano with the UUCSR.
I'm June, I'm from the OCC as well.
I'm Jim, I'm a tenor from the OCC.
I'm Barbara, I'm from the Contra Costa Chorale.
Yay!
Also represent.
I'm Peter, the Swan, come across the country.
I'm Margot, I'm also with the OCC and a little bit of a play cousin with the Rehearsal.
I'm Finn, I'm your son. I'm currently part of the Arquest Choir.
Yay!
Santa Rosa High.
My name is Celia, I'm an alto with OCC, it's my first year, and I am completely new to singing in a choir.
Wonderful.
Me too. Oh, me? All right. Hey, I'm Keith. I'm from the OCC, and I'm also brand new, so I'm hoping to get a lot out of this. All right, welcome.
Lisa from the OCC, Lisa D.
Lisa P. from the OCC.
I'm Peter from the CRC.
I'm Jasmine from the OCC.
I'm Irene from OCC and also the Acorn Music Choir.
I'm Benji, I'm from the Showbreak Choir Choir.
Rachel, Occidental Community Choir, tenor.
Excellent, welcome everyone. All right, well, we're going to jump right off here. So, one of the most important parts of choir is warm-ups.
Sorry.
First, go right on.
So officially, to make sure you're in the right place and you know why you're here today, welcome to Community Choir 101, a workshop designed to support you as community choral singers in learning music, improving your vocal technique, maximizing your rehearsal and practice time, and helping you to build confidence. That's the whole structure of everything you hear today. If you don't hear that, come talk to me afterwards and we'll work it out together. We really hope that you should have all received a handbook when you came in today. We'll go through most of it, but at the same time, you're not here to have us read from the handbook for you. I hope that you can use that as a resource throughout all of your choral endeavors, and if you have questions, there's a lot of time at the end.
Does anybody not have a handbook? Just real quick.
Can you raise this at all? We can, it has tiny little legs. Look at that, that's good. All right, great. So everyone has a handbook? All right. How's that? We need a problem.
The item is going to be skewed as well. Sure. Okay. All right, let me put it down now. It's not a live performance if it doesn't go right.
All right. So, one of the most important parts of choir is warm-ups.
That's not going to work.
That is not.
Okay, I've got one more thing. I'll be right there. Thank you.
I'm gonna talk about warm-ups. Who loves warm-ups?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, good question. Be honest. Be honest. If you don't, put your hands down. All right. Warm-ups are exceptionally important. I have had a lot of vocal training, and I will tell you warm-ups are one of the most important things that you will do. Just like an athlete, if you do not stretch before you run, you're going to pull a hamstring. And if you do not warm up before you sing, you could damage your vocal cords. Or strain the muscles around your voice box, which I did last winter. Let me tell you, that was fun. It wasn't. So, warming up is exceptionally important. Especially, and even if you are not actually going to sing that day. It is very important to warm up every morning, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's some humming, some lip trills, some diaphragmatic breathing, even if you don't ever get all the way through a vocal scale. If you are going to be speaking that day, it is a good idea to warm your voice up. I know that sometimes, especially nowadays, we are in a position where we don't speak for several hours. We wake up and we don't speak to another human being for several hours. And then when you finally get on the phone or somebody comes up, you try and say hello and your voice is very croaky. I'm sure that more than one person has had that experience. So warming up every morning is very important. So I'm going to encourage you to do a 5-minute warm-up when you wake up. Making it part of your morning routine is really helpful, I find. So when I wake up in the morning, first thing I do, usually, is probably yawn, right? Open my mouth, stretch my mouth out, which is really good to do. So first we're going to take our fingers and we're going to do a nice yawn. Massage that joint. Right where the jaw meets. And if you take your fingers and do the spot, and you put them on either side of your ear, this is called a lymphatic massage. And you start from the top and you go all the way down, always pulling down. I usually go right underneath my collarbones and then get below. So this is called a lymphatic massage. And what this does is encourage all of the wonderful fluids that your body develops to drain down your throat and get away from your singing apparatus, right? Even just doing this 3, 5, 10 times can be really helpful to start to warm up your vocal apparatus. Then usually I go to the bathroom, right? So get up, you do some yawning, you go to the bathroom. While you're going to the bathroom, while you're pulling out your toothbrush, gonna go ahead and brush your teeth. Do some very gentle lip trills or sirens. So first we're gonna do a lip trill. Margo.
You showed me how to do that and I forgot. It was great.
2 fingers, put it on either side of your mouth if you're having a hard time. Don't pull it apart, just very gently. Nice. We can talk about it later, Margo. All right, so we'll do a siren, and that's usually helpful to do. I don't know if you can do it while you're brushing your teeth. So, Gage's favorites is Julia Child's. You get your soup bowl, you get your olive wood spoon, it has to be olive wood.
Nothing else will do.
Exactly. You go,
So the beauty of the Julia Child's imagery, that it's so warm and forward that if we approach all of our music from there, we're doing less work to modify after the fact. It's way more accessible than trying to build every tiny scale together.
So the next is a very gentle hum. And I usually start on home. I go home. And I move that hum around my mouth. I tug on my ears. I move my head around. I move the sound up into my nose, make it really nasally. Switch your above your eyebrows? Do you feel any buzzing? Underneath your eyes, where do you feel the buzz? And then try and move that buzz around. Tug on your ears to loosen things. Feel down in your throat. Is there a buzz in your throat? Is it further down in your chest? Depending on your voice type, you'll feel the buzz in different places. So that really gentle hum. Usually I will do at least 3. 3 is the magic number for me, but really warm-ups is whatever works for you. So 3 is the magic number for me. I usually do home on pretty much the same note 3 times in a row. Until my breath runs out, I take a breath and do it again. So that's a really nice gentle warm-up to just get things moving. And then this is the best warm-up that we have found that warms you up the fastest.
You're gonna do the 1-5-1?
Yes.
This comes from Dr. Donald Brenniger from CSU Bakerfield. He believes that you only need 2 warm-ups to effectively warm up. And he also believes you never play the full chord, you only offer a root to a choir because intonation is our job to learn together, not the pianist. So the siren is the first one. He believes you start on a siren hum, and then you open to like an ah hum siren, and then you do this one. And the tendency is to rush through this. You want to slide slowly through the whole thing. It's like a vocal massage.
As slow as possible, and really very central in the mass.
I like to think of it like a paintbrush. If you move the paintbrush too fast, you don't dispense paint well, right? And then you'll go up by a half step. Spend more time in the liminal space. And you can do like 5 more, but for right now I'll only do 2. Last one.
Alright, now at this point, if you're singing that day, I would encourage you to do a couple of scales. I'm just going to give you an example, because I know we're running short on time. So,
What we can do is we can record a warm-up that we can send out to the email list. If we've got your email, we can send it out and be like, here's a 6-minute warm-up that you can do every day. I really like a 12 to 15-minute warm-up, but not everyone has time.
I find it depends on what I'm doing that day. If I'm going to be singing that day, yeah, I'm going to do a big warm-up in the morning. I find that it helps me later in the day. But if I'm not going to be singing that day, a little 5-minute. At this point, if I was just doing a 5-minute warm-up, I'd probably do all of that, and then I would do breathing through a straw, which you can do in the car on the way to where you're going, which is where I spend all of my time. So I take a big, deep back pressure breath, and then go out as though through a straw. For as long as you can. And I sometimes will do that for pretty much my whole drive. I'll take a couple of breaths in between so I don't feel lightheaded. But that's something that I can do on the way to a performance, on the way to somewhere where I'm going to be speaking. It really keeps my vocal cords engaged. There are a couple more that you can do. A, E, A, O, U. Just going up and down the scales. I think pretty much everyone is familiar with that, right? Okay. And then laughing is contagious. Who does not know laughing is contagious?
This is great.
All right, this is a good one. So I usually do a little bouncing on the balls of my feet for this one, but this is all about diaphragmatic breath. And I find that doing the diaphragmatic exercises at the end after I've warmed up my singing apparatus really works for me. But again, whatever works for you. So deep breath. Laughing is contagious and it's advantageous. Laughing is contagious and it's advantageous.
One more.
Laughing is contagious and it's advantageous.
Great range You can't beat it. A lot of this information is on page 9 and 10 if you need to look at that at all. But we will send out a warm-up video for you if you.
Alright, excellent. We'll send out a 6-minute warm-up video. Warm-ups are very important, we promise. You won't regret it.
I have lots of choir singers that are like, hey, I hate doing warm-up. I love warm-ups. They're one of my favorite things, and honestly, they're so very good for us. So that was section 2 of our goals. You already saw what to expect. It was on the flyer that, in theory, you saw when you signed up for this class. We're going to talk very briefly about vocabulary and musical symbols. The reality is, I've included a whole bunch in here. We could do really a 2-hour session on just musical symbols alone. But we did a session with Occidental Choir last year where we talked about musical symbols, and I had several people come up to me and go, I've been singing for like 30 plus years and I had no idea what that meant. That's kind of the genesis of this workshop was, what do we do to continue educating our community groups? So really quickly, if you want to go, the vocabulary page, I believe is the 3rd page in. You don't need me to read all of these things to you, but these are a lot of the ones that often people miss. A lot of them are very recognizable. If I was to go through a score with you, I could ask you, who's your composer, who's your arranger, who's your lyricist? But for me, what's really important is how we get to number 3, which is going to be how we approach a song. And my goal for you today is that when you first see a song, or when you first do sight reading, that you are equipped with tools that make everything easier for the rest of the season. That's really one of my biggest goals. So for that, one of the ones, I don't think I have it I'm on the wrong screen. Vocabulary. It's fancy. So in particular, the one that I would love, can we look at dynamics? It's on the next page, on page 4. I had several singers who finally after a while like, Gage, I don't understand relative dynamics. Totally. I learned through barbershop method that they think that you can think of dynamics in a way that I never did. Very classically trained musician. My wife and I approach music very differently. She is much more much more of an audio learner and much more about the emotion and the heart of music. And I am very much about what's on the page. Please don't have me improv. I'll be very sad. So for me, it was like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe you never, like, why do we have all these Italian symbols and words that we use consistently? Let's just go with our 5 major dynamic groupings. I can write, I promise. Okay, piano to fortissimo. You could really put the pianissimo in here if you wanted. You can tell me. What we did is we gave them a relative scale, a volume, because, and depending on your perspective, the letter names might not mean anything. Really important element of this was you find what your middle ground is. So mezzo forte, if you were just to talk really casually, that's about a solid mezzo forte for most of our groups. I think often we sing our mezzo fortes a lot closer to forte, which is why it's so hard to get to fortissimo and so hard to get to pianissimo. So this is just kind of a speaking average middle day. But your mezzo forte is not my mezzo forte, and it's not her mezzo forte. This is one of the further challenges that I really see when we look at choral music, is the relative sound of a section. It may say mezzo forte for the altos, right? But that doesn't mean that you're all singing a 3. Some of you are going to sing a 2 because you're loud. My wife is
I'm very loud.
in a very good way.
A very good way to figure out where your mezzo is just to very quickly, without thinking of it, say ba 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 ba. So right there, that's pretty much the middle of your dynamic range. And it's nice to be able to know that, just ba 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 ba. And you know that's about a mezzo. That's right in the middle. And then you know, okay, I only have this much space on this side and this much space on this side. And as you explore more of your voice, you'll get to know that. But checking in with that over and over again, especially as you are singing, if you have a fortissimo on the page and you're blasting out your voice, you're feeling like you're straining, you're tight, you're feeling like, wow, this is an awful lot. If you go back to that, just very ba ba ba, you're like, well, if that's my middle, and I'm singing way up here, that's too much. I'm over singing. I can pull back a little bit.
because we care about your longevity of voice. I want lifelong singers. That's always my goal. I would rather have a singer that is singing for their life as opposed to 3 years of really incredible, intense music.
He isn't lying, I'll tell you that.
So the big element of this is if the letters work for you, if the abbreviations work, great, fantastic, really accessible because it's what we use in most of our music. If numbers help you get past that element, great. Use whatever tool you need. We're going to get to that in marking your music. This is one of those elements of marking your music more functionally. You turn your page to page 5. We're going to talk very briefly about meter. This is one of the areas that I have found a lot of choirs get stuck. It's your director's prerogative to make music as accessible as possible, but also to maintain the feeling and the pulse of the song. And moving between 4/4, 2/2, 1, 3/4, and 6/8, that's a lot of numbers. And that doesn't work for everyone. So realistically, I just wanted to include this in here when we're talking about compound meter. I have a lot of people go, what's compound meter, Gage? Well, the macro beat, which is, if we're in 4/4, is 1, 2, 3, 4. The macro beat is very obvious. You've got a solid impulse. In compound time, it's the micro beat that actually determines more. So if we're in 6/8, if we're in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead, we haven't fallen on the same type of strong and weak beats. This is a lot of information for me to shout at you very quickly. That's the only reason I've included this in here. We've got a lot of information about musical symbols. I don't know that you need me to go over musical symbols at this moment in time. If you have any musical symbols that you look at and you're like, I've seen that and I have no idea what to do, we can talk about that right now. So feel free to take a look at musical symbols for a second, or a musical term that you have a question about. We can go over it together. If not, I'm really excited to get into how we approach our music, because that's really the foundation of everything we're doing today.
I do encourage you all, you can keep this handbook in your folder, the music folder as well. And if you have a piece of music that you're like, wait, what is that? Now you have a key. You can open it up and go, aha, that's what that symbol is.
Yes, please.
And I'm also movement.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
So, meno being more movement, and the alternate being the inverse. And it's just modifiers for the rest of our, we see it in our dynamics and in our tempo, in our meter. Like the pacing of the song, more realistically.
It's just fast or slow, it's on a scale.
Yes, there's challenge here. Some of it's like the artistic movement forward of the piece, but it might still maintain the same tempo or pulse, but it's going to feel with more energy or more movement forward.
It feels like it stretches instead of it keeps a steady beat.
Yes.
Exactly.
Margot.
We have one of those FPs in our music.
Fortepiano,
Could
yes.
you demonstrate what it sounds like?
That's actually,
That's
so
a good
we
question.
see them far less in choral music, but I'm glad that you grabbed that. So it's on page 7 if you're asking about the forte piano, the FP. So the demonstration of this would be if I was to sing la. So you hit it and then it's immediately soft. There's not even a la, but it's la.
But how do you do that when it's just like a little quarter note or an eighth note?
So well, that's up to your director often for interpretation of like how are you going to shape it. On a quarter note, you would mostly see that on things that are longer than impulse, so like a whole note on average, because there's room for that to occur. In a very fast song, if I go like it just sounds like your a day crescendo or diminuendo at that point.
The piece she's talking about, it is on a quarter note.
Which one is it?
I can't remember, but she showed it to me the other day. I know, I was like, huh. Yeah, you just hit it and then move on.
Celia.
Hi, Gage. I'm looking at the musical symbols. I see tenuto, there's a symbol, but
Yes.
legato does not appear to have a symbol.
No, so legato is not a symbol, but in fact a series of groupings that we could see. So often in your music you might see, sorry, I'm going to do jazz notation because it's just faster. So if I wanted these to all be sung together, connected, legato, you would have a slur over them. Or if it was, there would be a tie if it's the same note, but that's a whole different matter for our purposes today. But legato is not a specific symbol, but instead an interpolation.
And sometimes you will see the word legato written over your
Yes.
music in some areas.
And same thing, so it's connected phrasing generally across a healthy phrase until a rest, a break, or a natural point to separate.
Even knowing that the top was a slur and that the bottom was a tie, I just learned something.
That's exactly it.
There you go.
And the differentiation between them being length versus connection. Yes, Pete?
I want to go all the way back to basics. What's a quarter note versus a whole note?
Yes. Quarter notes, we get into trouble here in America because we refer to things based upon 4/4. In 4/4, we divide a measure into 4 quarter notes, so there are 4 beats in the measure. Same thing, a whole note being worth 4 beats in 4/4. So it's just all tied together, exactly. So it's just, in 4/4, a quarter note is our verse, and it's the value relative to the rest of the time. I think there's actually a section here that I put in that talks about how we analyze time and how we interpret the fractions. And that's the difference between the macro and the micro beat.
These pictures on like page 6, those are quarter notes, right?
Yes, those are quarter notes. And the reason we know it's a quarter note is it's a solid head with no tail or dot, which the dot is another modifier that I didn't include in here. The tail is it shortens it. So in 4/4, if we add a tail to the quarter note, it's now an 8th note. It's a 16th note, it's a 32nd, it's a 64th, and a 128th. Hold on, I think it's hemi, semi, demi, something quaver. I don't know, I'm sorry. I don't know my British terms as well as I should. But all subdivisions,
The whole
yes.
note is when it does, it's not the limit.
Whole note is, yes, with no stem. Half note being open with the stem. Quarter note, or technically I should not do jazz notation, 8th note, and then we keep going further. If I wanted to get something longer than a whole note, I have to start modifying with things like dots. This dot, if I applied it to any of them, this is actually probably really good, I'm sorry I didn't include it. This now takes half of the value of this and adds it to it. So where this was worth 4 beats, this is now worth 6. If I add it here, this is now worth 3. This is now worth 1.5. This is now worth
3/4.
3/16, right?
3/16.
3/16.
Yeah. I would never tell you the 3/16. Like we would never. We would talk about it in relative terms to what else is in the measure.
I'm pretty sure it's 3/8.
Oh, you're great. Yes.
3/8.
No, 3/8 would be. Because this is a single eighth, and then we add half of the eighth, which is another 16. And then, just so you know, if you ever do any form of notation, you will eventually see 2 dots. Don't worry about it. You almost never see that anymore.
Well, if you sing any early music, you might see a half note with a bar on either, a vertical bar on either side, yeah.
So if you see this one, it's a little TIE fighter.
It's a TIE fighter.
It's with 8. It's a breve.
Do you see that dot very often?
You do in 6/4. Is the most common place you'd see this is in 6/4. There was a piece I wrote for the OCC that had a lot of these in it. But the reality is, this is also all about meter and compound. A lot of the time, this could probably just be 3/4 instead of 6/4, and then it would be a dotted half note. Yeah. Yay, music. Sorry, I know that this is the element I didn't want to get too caught up in because we could spend so much time on this, and I would happily give a course on this form of music theory. I love this music theory, but it's tangential to parts of what we're doing.
That's choir 102. Now we're talking about key signatures.
Is that where we're at? Key signature?
So.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, we did warm-ups already, but this is my choirs every single time. And my son. Okay, so we're going to approach a song. The one thing that you, the approach a song is in this.
Yes.
Great. That's page number, for all of you that are looking at it, 11. Fantastic. Great. We're going to print out music.
Okay.
It's fine. Okay, so this is the part of this course that I really am excited about to share with you. When we are learning a song, it requires us to efficiently understand how to get through our music and how to navigate a score. When I open a score for the first time, basically this is the process of what I would do. I'm not telling you that my method is perfect, but I do think it's good. I still use it. As a musician, when I open up my score, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look and I'm going to find my line. First thing I'm going to do is, do I start in the very beginning? Because I am very much in the pressure of, if I have to start singing immediately. Look at you, Dave.
Dave's great. Thank you.
Where's my vocal line? My vocal line doesn't start down here. Great, now I can start looking at other things because I'm not pressed for time. I'm assuming that we're just singing automatically, not getting minutes to look at our music altogether. So my process is to figure out how much time I need to dedicate to looking at my music. From here, I know where my vocal line exists. This is really important, and I actually find that choral singers don't get taught this very often. When we are looking at a system of text, so we're in 4/4, I have to do a whole bunch of lines, I'm so sorry. We'll just say vocal, no, I have to do 4 at least. I have to do 5. It gets worse. Okay, so you're gonna pretend that these are really beautiful stabs, because they don't need to be perfect right now.
You should have brought the staff.
It's in my office, but the pens are dead. Then I've got a really beautiful treble.
Beautiful.
Beautiful treble clef.
Beautiful trouble.
Another beautiful treble clef. A bass clef. A treble clef. Again, jazz notation, I'm sorry. Beautiful bass clef. This is my piano. My piano is going to be bracketed together by just a straight line here at the end. You'll see here, and then there'll often be a bracket that looks like this. Something like that. I'm not doing very well. That's not the part that's important to me. You often can figure out which one's the piano line based upon. There's no text. Choral part. This is the one that gets missed really, really often. As choral musicians, when we're looking for choir parts, there is this fun little bracket here. It looks like this on your music. You can see it here, where the choir finally starts to come in. If you have your music, you can look as well. This indicates a grouping of choral musicians. This is only used for vocal musicians. And all the time I have choral singers. This was a solo line, that was the trick. To go, oh, I thought I was the top line. The way that I automatically know as a singer that it's not the top line is I was bracketed. I'm in the choir grouping. This transformed my choral skills, knowing how to access my choral part. So that's the first part. Then I look, where's my vocal line? I know I'm a bass, I'm gonna look at my line. I'm gonna look here. Now let's move to everyone's favorite part, key signatures.
Jake, are the choir parts bracketed too as well, as far as like soprano, alto, and
Yes.
tenor bass?
If-
Are those gonna be in separate brackets?
Yes, if this was to be maybe soprano, alto, bass, right now, the bracket would have just been extended like that.
Okay.
It can be, if there's 12 parts, there can be a choral bracket all the way.
Okay.
It's just indicative of the ensemble type and shape. But the part that a lot of people don't like, and I'm sorry, is key signatures. Who loves key signatures in here? Raise your hand.
How many of you play instruments?
Say what?
The reality of this is memorization often ends up being our key, but if you can name note names, you can get through almost every single key with an asterisk. Okay, this one's the trick question. The first one I gave you. If you're really good at key signatures, don't answer. If you're not great, take a guess. What key signature is this?
B flat.
You would think it was B flat, but it's not. So when we are finding this, that's why it's a trick question. When we are finding the key signature in with flats, it's the second to last flat that tells us. So with 2 flats, now it's B flat. The trick question was, you now need to know your circle of fifths to be able to do this one. This is the key of F major or D minor. Trick question. This one's not a trick question, I promise.
It's 11:10.
Thank you. No, I know. This is the most intensive. This is the most intensive part of the entire session. So that's a G sharp. When we're looking at our major key signatures with sharps, you just go up a half step. So up a half step from G sharp is A. We're in the key of A. We do have a relative minor of F minor, but that's a different matter. We're not going to talk about relative minors right now, or modes. We could get into modes, but I don't think anyone wants to. The first thing I'm going to look at is my key signature. If I'm in A, I'm going to look at my part. I'm a bass, so bass clef. If there's 5 lines, and I'm a bass, so it's pretty basic. If it's on the, I know it starts on F sharp. That's not very convenient for me. That's the 6. Why did the composer write on the 6? I don't know. But I will then find my relative element. Again, this is music theory more than I think it is music interpretation and being able to assess your music. Yes. Knowing relatively, hopefully your director goes, what key signature are we in? Or someone goes, hey, we're in A major. And then you can find it. Like this copy that we're doing with the Occidental Community Choir, Harmony's Never Too Late. There's no flats or sharps. So it's C. You would only know that if you knew that it's C at this moment in time. If there's nothing, it's C or A minor. Just default to one of the 2 guesses. And then I would find my relative part from there. Great, isn't that so informative, so helpful? How does it help you? So the thing from where this helps moving forward is that it helps us find our vocal part earlier. It helps us know what note we're singing relative to, if we're listening to the accompaniment. And the piano's largely going to guide us. If I know I'm singing the root, so if I know I'm in A major and I know I'm singing in A, I'm listening for root movement, which is audiation, which we're going to get to audiation as well. Yes, Joe.
So what I do is, if I know I'm coming in on Do or 1, then, and it's like 4 pages in before I sing anything.
Yes.
While the music is going, I can hear in my head where the Do or the 1 is, and I write a 1 next to the note, and then I have to conclude in myself a breadcrumb. Oh, I'm not going to be way down here at the bottom just singing the Do. So that's what.
That is exactly where we're headed, actually.
It is how you mark your music.
And how do you find your starting note? That's exactly what Jim is talking about. So key signatures are important for finding your starting note especially.
That's step 3 in the handbook that you were given. Again, this all only matters to an extent if you are like, totally I got my key signatures. If that doesn't work for you, I imagine a lot of your directors, our directors are playing starting pitches, and we go from there. You just need to know your relative intervals, and when you're rehearsing your music at home, we get to that portion in just a few minutes. Okay, so whatever, you're like, Gage, I have no idea what note I'm singing, but I know that the person next to me will find the starting note. Great, that is the best. You just can't always depend on it. My biggest thing is, you will find that part eventually, no matter what happens. Don't always depend on them to sing it first. That's the only element I care about. They can sing it first for the first 5 times, and then you start jumping in first, even if you're wrong. But that's my philosophy. Okay, road mapping. So we're going to start marking our music because we have to understand what's going on. The first thing you're going to often mark, where am I going to take my breath? Because I am a singer and I need to know how I'm going to breathe organically because we have to worry about text, we have to worry about inflection, we have to worry about connection, and we have to worry about pitch. So we're going to find our breath marks. Breath marks, if you've never drawn one, it's just a little comma. Look at that. That friendly little breath mark tells me I can breathe right now. Great. Take your breaths. Well done. Great. So you've started marking your breath marks in spots that you see either rests. They will often come at natural points when there are, there's a word for this. No, it's in my head. Punctuation. That's the word I couldn't get. Often they will come at moments of punctuation, commas, periods. Sometimes semicolons. For me, a lot of the times I like my singers to sing through semicolons because the thought feels a little bit more connected. So you'll start marking your breath marks, or you will circle them because a really good composer or arranger will tell you where they want you to breathe so that you can interpret their vision of the music. From there, you're going to start boxing or marking dynamics. When I look at my score, I want to know the first thing I'm singing. Is it forte, is it mezzo forte, is it pianissimo? Because I want to be on dynamics as quickly as possible. You're like, great, I got those 2 things. Dynamics being whether it's going to be crescendos, hairpins, mezzo forte piano, whatever it's going to be, whatever symbol you use. Fantastic. Forte piano. Perfect time to circle it and go, oh my gosh, this is coming up on the next page. Okay. Rhythm and counting. This is the next one that I look at. If I'm in 4/4 and I go, that doesn't look easy to read. I am first going to mark it, so I go pay attention. I'm going to box that measure, and I will write out my counting. So if we're in, again, this is all more music theory based than some of this. I should have drawn a much longer line. We're in 4/4. It's very tiny, it's very cramped, and it's very well done. And my pattern is dot, 8th, 16th, dotted 8th quarter. I'm gonna go, oh no. And I'm gonna start writing out time. So I'm probably pretty good with this. I know that 2 falls in here, but this is the and of 2. 1 and a 2 and a, depends on how you can. You could do Takadimi if you know Takadimi. And we get to here and you go, this is 3, 1 E. I would write my E here, and I would put 4, so that at least I had a map that when I approached this measure, I'd go, oh, it's not so hard now, even if it was still hard. This is the big thing here. That's what I wanted to talk about rhythm and counting. When you find something that you're struggling with, or if you mess up a rhythm more than like 3 times, write in the counting. Or you're in compound time. Yes, Jasmine.
Can you sing that for us with the 1 and 3 and
We'll just say.
Yeah, or
So,
say it.
again, so if we're in 4, 3, 4, da, 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 da. So it looks bad, but it's actually not too terrible because this is very, very fast. And this is very common rhythm. We basically inverted a swung, I inverted a swung rhythm here. If our swing, if you were to write it out, most of the time looks like this.
So is E half of N?
Yes, it's the 16th note. 1 E and So E and are 16th note features. So we've divided the quarter note into 4.
Some of us might want to refresh our rhythm and counting basics. Is there
Yes.
something on YouTube that you can throw our way?
Absolutely.
I think so. I can do a follow-up after this with several resources. I have a couple warm-ups that are not even mine that I think would be really great for everyone. And I can pull some of this stuff out. I also, this is good. This is fun. We can do this another time.
Did you have that music you were going to pass around?
I didn't make enough of it.
No, but you passed the one around, so you see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're talking about that one?
Yeah. Oh, talk about
No, it's right there.
So Gage and I mark our music very, very differently. This is my
Well,
copy.
we're just
Absolutely, I just figured that since we started passing around everything. Because we have a lot of people.
we do. So you're like, great, I got 3 things, my pages are looking really good, I know everything that's going on. Fantastic. You're gonna start marking your entrances, you're gonna be like, Gage, pay attention. I'm really mean to myself when I write notes, I'm like, pay attention, idiot. But you don't need to do that. You can be very kind and compassionate, go, entrance coming, look at your director, eyeglasses, eyeballs. Crystal does a lot of eyeballs.
And eyebrows. And the eyebrows mean different things.
So you start marking your entrances, especially on page turns. This is something I've noted in the handbook. Page turns are a choral singer's downfall. If you are not turning your page early, you will often get caught up on the page turn. So in the margin, I will write what's coming up. Even if it's like the note, I will extend the stab, I'll write the quarter note on G, or I'll write the whatever pattern is coming up. And you're like, I totally got it, there's so much space. Phrasing and expression. This was the element I was excited about as a director. As a choral musician, when you can start to intuit and interpret what a director is going to ask you for or what a composer or arranger has set forth, that's like the joy of singing. You just sing it automatically. But you have to take everything else into account to get to this. You have to know what your dynamics and breath marks are. You have to know how connected everything is. You have to be really solid on your rhythm and counting. And then your text stress, which is the next item. That's a U matcher right now. But if you look in the handbook, I've outlined how you might mark your text. You might underline text that syllables and multisyllabic words that need to be stressed differently, so you don't sing, what was the one the other day? Oh, it's syllable, right? Syllable, like if we were to pronounce it incorrectly with the wrong inflection. Phrasing and expression all fits in this. Gage, I'm still great. I'm doing such good, my music is so good. Let me make it more complicated. Let's go to roadmap. Okay, so some of our music, Harmony is Never Too Late, this copy that Dave pulled out earlier is a perfect example. About 2/3 of the way through the music, it tells you to go back to page 6, and then on the bottom of page 8, it tells you to go all the way to page 12, and that's the downfall. It saves pages in the octavo. I make as many markings as possible to never get caught up by a roadmap. I do have singers that make photocopies. I'm not telling you to legally photocopy music because it's not legal. That being said, if you can find a way to conveniently put the pages after the fact so you don't have to turn back in your music, that's your discretion. I don't make photocopies of my music to do that, but I do know singers that do. I will always mark my music so I know where I need to turn to. I will dog ear pages or put in sticky notes so that I'm never avoiding the. Okay, you have the roadmap. First thing I do when I look at the piece of music is there anything complicated? We have all those musical symbols like the dal segno, the dies al coda, the Dolfine, all of these things that tell us we have to just bounce between the music. That's the reason we didn't cover it. They all just tell you to go to different spots in the music when you look for the symbol. Road mapping is the last thing I do so I don't get caught unaware. Right before I sing, I make sure I know what directions I'm gonna head in and where. And you're like, my music's a mess now. Totally. I am. But if you do all of it, you're awesome. This is a lot to accomplish, and please don't start by trying to accomplish all of these things in the first 5 minutes with your music. If you only accomplish breath marks and dynamics and rhythm and counting, you're great. You're amazing. You're doing better than the average choral musician, easily at that point in time. Your music will be so much easier to learn if you can follow along this way.
As far as markings are concerned, a lot of different musicians have different kinds of markings. Like I said, Gage and I mark up our music very differently. If you'll see that piece of music that's traveling around, whenever I have to take a big breath, I do BB. That for me, that's what triggers in my brain, BB, big breath. For a catch breath, I do CB, CB, catch breath.
For a big breath, I might put a hash in my music so I remember to take it. For a catch breath, I'm just putting a tiny little dot.
Yep.
So like we have equivalent symbols, and what you'll see at the end of the section on marking music, you need to develop a vocabulary that works for you.
Exactly. So it's really what works for you. What are you going to be able to see in the moment while you're trucking through your music at a clip that you're going to be able to go, oh, big breath. Now I take a big breath. Now I stop. Now I take a big breath. I'm going to pay attention to the director right here. So I'm going to write some eyeballs, or I'm just going to write a star. I'm going to heart it. I'm going to circle it, whatever works. As far as circling is concerned.
Do you circle something the first time you get it wrong, Crystal?
I do not circle something the first time I get it wrong. Sometimes I do if I think I'm going to do it again. But often, I will give myself a chance. I will give myself a first pancake. Go through, I'm like, oh, first pancake, I messed up. The second time through, if I make a mistake, it doesn't matter if it was in the same place or not, I circle that mistake. I try not to make it too dark, mind you, and it'll be while I'm going through, and I'll just circle, oh, there's a mistake, oh, I made a mistake right there, oh, that page turn is tricky, I'm just gonna circle that so I can go in later and write a little staff with my first note starting so the page turn isn't hard. If I make a mistake twice, I circle it twice, because then I know this is something I need to practice at home. This is something that I need to go home and I can open up my music and go, where is the double circle? Where is that? It's right there, I need to go over that. If I make this mistake 3 times in a row, then I know I'm in trouble because I'm about to create a habit. I'm about to create something that I'm gonna have a really hard time unlearning. So that for me is what works. Really do what works for you. This leads me to highlighters. I'm very excited to talk to you about highlighters. It is ridiculous how excited I am to talk to you about highlighters. All right, so who uses highlighters in their music? Excellent, wonderful. I found my favorite highlighter. Woo! I thank you so much. I'm telling you, I've officially reached adulthood. It's called a mild liner. it is not fluorescent. And I find that the fluorescent actually tends to distract me from my music. So, but I tend to switch parts. Sometimes I'll sing soprano, sometimes soprano 2, sometimes alto, whatever works. And you know, sometimes you get confused with your music. Sometimes you have 3 vocal lines on one staff and you're like, where's the staff, which direction am I, which note am I singing? And I find that taking my little mild liner really works. It also has a smaller end. And if I have like 3 vocal lines on one line, I just dot that note that I'm supposed to be singing. That really, really helps me. I'm gonna pass around my favorite highlighter, please don't see it. It's in beige, and I have found that for me really works. Now, there are some people who really want a bright blue. There are some people who want a bright pink. That's what's gonna get their attention. I do actually highlight all of my dynamics in my music now. I highlight the time signature and I highlight all of my dynamics. And I have found that I pay more attention to my dynamics when I highlight them. I don't only highlight my vocal line. Again, this is really what works for you, and I really encourage you to try some things out. Go through your music, do things differently, and then while you're singing it, note, oh, actually, I'm not making that mistake that I commonly make because it is highlighted, it is marked this way. Oh, I did remember to take a big breath because I did a big old comma right there. But I didn't remember when I didn't mark my music. So this is something that really is indicative of the person that you are and the way that you see things.
I can say, I know a lot of choral singers that go, I don't need to mark my music, I'll remember it.
Ooh.
That is the downfall of the choral singer, truly. Even if you only write it once and you never look at it again, it is an incredible memory aid to put kinesthetic act to that memory, to remember it, even if you never look at it again. If you are someone who you can't highlight your sheet music, because I know it's not always possible, sometimes you have to return things, star your music on every single page. You can do that in the margin in pencil, and it's non-permanent, right? I'm a heathen. I really like to mark my music in pen. But that's my prerogative.
He's a bad
here
boy.
It does say use pencil, keep it simple, and personalize it to yourself. But the memory component is so big. And I know so many good singers that go, I'm not going to mark my music, I'll remember. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to remember. At least the first 2 times. They might remember it after making mistakes, which is a method, but not a great method.
Gage also tends to be not very kind to himself when he is writing his music. He will call himself stupid in his music. Like, pay attention, stupid. If that's what works for you, I'm not going to
self-abuse.
For me, I do aspirations. I go, look up, girl. Like, come on, pay attention. I'll be a little lighter with myself. But really, it's what works for you. What is going to make you actually go, oh, clue in right here. By the way, do you circle it the first time you make a mistake?
I will, if I'm flat on a note or if I'm sharp on a note, I will write an arrow the first time I make a mistake to tell myself the next time, oh, you overshot it in whatever direction it is. That works for me really well. If I make a mistake a second time, it gets a giant scribble. That's it for me. I really hate making mistakes.
I found it very useful to start adding things that Gage says that are not necessarily in the music. So if every single time the choir is singing too softly, he's always going like this, I will write louder, even if it doesn't say louder in the music, because my director wants me to sing.
Because we know we're finding that challenge. That's really, it's very helpful. I like that as a director. That is one of the elements that we're going to get to actually right after this section. Yeah. This section, the one thing I want to say is, don't be passive in your rehearsals. Write notes for other sections because they're all helpful to you. I have choral singers that have asked me for copies of music that only have their line on it. We as choral singers have the joy of looking at the rest of the parts that are singing around us and interpreting music. So when we talk about interpreting phrasing and expression and emotion, that comes in looking at everything else because our part alone doesn't convey everything but ourselves as an organism.
Only have your line on it. I mean, you wouldn't know where to come in or.
They're depending upon music and musicality.
Yeah.
So they're going to count for their 8 measures of rest, and then they're going to come in. Which there are people that can do that, and there are texts that work that way. it's not great for the, I would say, the consummate choral singer.
I think, didn't everybody used to do that
Yes.
way back in the old
Yes.
days? You'd only get your part.
Right, because it's too much paper. It was
I mean, just
too
as Jim pointed out, you have to pay attention to the entire thing in order to really learn it as quickly as I think that we have to learn music nowadays. So for instance, if, I'm picking on the tenors, I'm sorry, but if the tenors are always coming in flat, if you're hearing the director be like, tenors, pick up that pitch, tenors, you're flat, then you know, well, I'm supposed to come in an octave higher on the tenor note. And if the tenors are flat, how do I find my note? How am I gonna find my starting pitch? And that's why you have to pay attention to where the tenors are. Well, the tenors are singing this note, oh, but 3 notes later, they are singing the exact same note, by then they have the correct pitch. So I'm paying attention to this one, not the first one they sing. Yes.
I'm part of a choir where, so I'm trans and I haven't actually sung with a group since I started at T. And I was just like a soprano first alto when I started at T. I don't have muscle memory in bass. I skipped over tenor while my voice was dropping.
Yeah.
But I still have my muscle memory for my alto soprano. So I sit next to the sopranos, and depending on where my voice falls, I either go match with them or I sing with the basses who know where their notes are.
Right.
But I have consent to sing a soprano note, and then a bass note, and then a soprano note, and then an alto note, depending on where my voice will fall.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of why I'm here, is because it's such, I don't know how to read bass comp.
Right.
I was a trumpet player for 9 years, and then I was part of a choir where I was alto for 5 years, so I'm like, hey. So when I can't figure out my lower note, if I'm sitting next to someone who doesn't have it just passed down, I'll sing with the sopranos.
Yeah.
But then I have to be careful not to go too high.
And you're doing it all in Hebrew, right?
Yeah. That was my other question when you were talking about knowing how to sing something. Like, what if we don't know the translation of a language? Because like, you're like, oh, just do it based on. I'm like, we don't have translation next to our Hebrew.
Correct. Right.
So it's just like, I go based off the piano.
That's great.
The emotion of our accompanist, and like, I don't know exactly the exact translation of words.
Exactly.
But I can feel the emotions of the piano.
Right, because the harmonic movement is really moving it forward. That's actually really great. That's in the text component. If you were fortunate enough to be able to like take your music home, or your director provides a translation, write a translation across your music, but that's probably not always possible for you to actually, you can't make that.
And there's not enough space under the words to write more words.
Yes.
Before the next bar.
Exactly, so it's its own challenge.
If it was in like big size for people who can't see, that would be great.
It's like
but it's on camera.
Right, that's fair. Exactly, so listening to the harmonic movement is really it. That's where I find everything when I make changes or interpretations to music.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
We have the other 3 sections are
Okay, great.
when I make changes or interpretations, it's always based upon harmonic components, because it goes, oh wow, that was just the most gorgeous moment. We're doing Stars I Shall Find by
David Dickow.
Dickow.
David Dickow.
There we go. I just couldn't think of the first
Well
name.
done. You're welcome.
Thank you. And there's this section about halfway through that it's just supposed to be at speed at 8th notes, and it's just these 3 most luscious chords. Just take a little bit more time to really appreciate what we've gotten to.
Paige and I have actually been doing some research about transitioning voices, and there was this incredible article in the Choral Journal. I don't know if you saw it, but it was amazing, and it really actually did explain a lot. Transitioning voices, people who are trans who are transitioning to a different voice type, people who are going through puberty and their voice is transitioning, also people who are older and their voice is transitioning. Often we'll have sopranos drop down to alto, and then they don't recognize where the resonation is supposed to be in their bodies. They're not used to their resonation supposed to being in their chest while they're singing alto. So I feel like we should teach a whole class just on that. Wow. It's really, really fascinating.
I was going to say that's something that I'm really interested in. I want to work with someone to create like a doc sheet, like a marching band style doc sheet of like, since most trans people are some sort of neurodivergent, be like, yo, you feel this note here, but even though it's only half step up, this note is not in the same place as the note before.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Most of my friends went from sopranos and altos to tenors, but I just, in 10 months, I went from second soprano to baritone.
Wow.
Which is
that's a shit.
I didn't have it in it.
Yeah.
Oh, just sing throughout. I'm like, I didn't have the note I had yesterday.
Wow.
Which is traumatic.
Yeah, exactly,
So,
exactly.
yes, they're trying to work on science, but like not for as dramatic as mine has been.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Well, after class, we should definitely talk about this, we've
Yeah.
got some information to share.
I just wanted to get the attribution of where that article.
I'll send this out
The
and
choral journal.
all the stuff. I'm making notes. I know I send out warm-ups. I'll send out the 3 choral journal articles and publications. There was one other thing that I forgot.
Basics.
Ah, yes.
Gage said if we ever move from our house, the person that moves in is gonna be like, why do I have all these choral magazines showing up? All right, so we're going to very quickly go into how to connect to songs. Now this actually attaches
Even when you don't like them.
what to mark in your music. You'll notice that, I imagine everybody has a director that is saying, this is a sweeping motion. This is a tender moment. And you write on your music, be tender at that exact time, right? So there are things that your director will say to you that you should write down. Emotive words, right? Schmaltzando, that's what
It can be made up. It doesn't have, this was the thing that worked for one of my singers that came up to me last week and said, you said this 3 years ago. And when you ask for something with this feeling, this is what I do. Yes.
Yeah.
My interpretation is also different than yours. There are things that I think of like as really romantic, and for other people they're like, that's not romantic, dude. Well, I thought it was romantic. Do music. I think I'm good.
So of course,
The evolution of markup, so I've sung in choirs for my whole life basically. But I've been very soprano-centric, right, about paying attention to music. And in the last couple of years, I realized even if I just mark the unison parts, you know, like I bracket it makes such a huge difference. And so, yeah.
yeah, it really does. I never used to pay attention to the bass part ever. I'm sorry, but I didn't. I was like, I know my melody, I'm good. And then I started singing alto 2. I know, typical soprano. No, I started singing alto 2. They started putting me in random places, because I have a big range. They'd put me at alto 2 and I'd be like, how do I find my note? Like, this isn't just the melody. And really, I had to start looking, okay, well the tenor singer, right before I do, okay, mark the tenor. But the tenors are flat. So like, so that's how I know, like, okay, this is what you do, this is how you do it.
That's the best relative way for if you can't access e-signatures at this point in time, find someone else that's singing your note or find it in the piano first and go draw an arrow that tells you this is where I find it, even if it's 3 measures ahead, which I know it sucks when it's 3 measures ahead, and you're just in your head. Just make sure it's in your head and not out loud, that's all. And that's in fact in there, make sure it's not out loud.
One thing that helped me when I first joined the choir was that people taught me to look for the note that you know, and then find the other notes that are just like it, and then
Then you move her.
you know which note that is,
Yeah.
If you're singing this note on 2, then you're singing that same note on 4.
Exactly.
Like that note is kind of home base.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And then you kind of know where the range is around it.
For me, that's always middle C, because I had a tuning fork that was middle C. And I know where middle C feels. I know what middle C feels like when I sing it. And so if I see middle C, it always feels like home. It's always like, oh, and there's home. And I can, okay, that's a note above, that's a whole step up. I can go a whole step up from home, got it. Like, and it might not be C for you, it might be A, it might be something else. I don't read bass clef either, so I don't know. But,
I moved from saxophone to euphonium and that made the difference. When you're forced to read it, yeah.
Well, that's like with tenors, you get the tenor clef.
Yeah.
And then sometimes every few songs you have your all in the bass
all of a
clef.
sudden in the bass clef.
It's completely different.
It is, it's completely different. So how to connect with songs?
Is tenor clef an octave lower than?
It's an octave lower.
So you have to,
it'll have
hold
an
on, we have to be really careful. Tenor clef, this is,
Sorry.
no, it's okay, this is an octave shifted treble clef for tenors. But tenor clef is a completely different clef out of what we see here, which we don't use
We don't
most of
usually
the time.
see it
You see it in early music, just like the alto clef.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we're only going to see these 3. If there's an 8 underneath, we know that it's been dropped. We don't generally see it the other way around.
Often we call this with the little 8 under it a tenor clef, even though technically a tenor clef looks different. I know. Okay, so how to connect with your music. So, You've marked up your music, you know where you're breathing, you know that you should be looking up at this point. The director has said schmaltzando and you have written that somewhere. And you really don't like this song. Who has had this experience? I think all of us have had the experience where you are being forced to sing a song you don't actually like. And we're gonna sing it because we're choral singers, and that's part of it. You don't get to cherry pick the music that you sing. You have to sing the whole program because that's it. In order to sing the song you really like, you have to sing the song you don't like. So, how do we do this without torturing ourselves? There are a couple of different tactics that I think some of you will probably relate to. The first thing that you can do is you can find a personal connection. I specifically really love lyrics. I'm a lyricist, I love lyrics. So I will look at the poetry of a song. I will look at the lyrics and I will see the line that I really love, that connects with something that I can connect my heart to. And I can go, okay, that one line. I am singing for that one line. It might be one word. It might be one word that you're like, oh, I actually do love singing that word that way. Out of this entire song, I love 2 notes, and it is that word. Fine. If that's what it is, then you sing the entire song leading up to just that word. And afterward, you get really happy that you got to sing that one word, and you finish the rest of the song with that emotion. So finding a personal connection with the music. Now, sometimes it's not the lyrics. Sometimes the lyrics really don't connect with you. Sometimes it is a vocal line. Maybe it's not your vocal line. Maybe it's the bass vocal line or the tenor vocal line, or maybe there's a specific part of the piano that you just love. If you are able to not focus on how much you dislike this song, but instead focus on, oh, I have the opportunity to get to hear the tenor sing that part, and I love that part. Or I get to hear that 30 seconds in Across the Vast Eternal Sky when the pianist plays this incredible, wonderful accompaniment. That makes me happy, just that 30 seconds. I'll sing the whole song to get to that 30 seconds. So being able to identify what parts of the music do you like? What is it? And mark that in your music. Maybe pull out a different highway and be like, this is it. I often put a heart over the part that I'm like, this is why I'm singing this song. It's this vocal line. It's the bass is singing this note. It's the piano doing this. All right.
You wanted to talk about challenging yourself. Good.
Yeah,
Finding your challenge.
I totally did. I wanted to talk about that.
The-
Yes, okay, thank you. So, sometimes, rarely I think, but sometimes, there won't be a line. There won't be a word. You're like, no, I really just dislike this song from front to back. It's not great. So, at that point, what you can do is you can go into student mode and go, okay, what is the thing that I need to work on most as a choral singer? Do I need to work on breath support? Do I need to work on finding my pitch? Do I need to work on listening to the other parts around me? Is that something I need to do? Is there a specific part in this piece of music where I'm having a really hard time holding that vocal line all the way through? And that's something that I know I personally need to work on. So you make that piece your challenge piece. I'm going to challenge myself to use all of my breath support and all of my tools to breathe exactly where I'm supposed to breathe. This has a really weird dynamic contrast here, and I'm going to challenge myself to focus on that dynamic contrast. So you basically take it out of emotive and you put it into technique. You focus on technique. If you can't find a personal connection with the song, then pick somewhere in the music where you're like, this is the technique I need to work on. And I'm going to use this piece as a tool to improve my own musicality. So that's another way. Is there anything I didn't say? Phrasing. Phrasing's a big one. Often, especially if you don't like a piece of music, you can respect the phrasing. You can respect what the composer was thinking when they made that phrasing. You can go, okay, I'm going to work on using my instrument to really be expressive in this phrasing, because that's something I need to work on for another piece, which is also something else you can do. If there's a piece you specifically don't like, but you notice this has tons of dynamics in it, and this other piece that I really do like has tons of dynamics in it too. I'm gonna work on this in order to help me with this other piece that I really like. And it helps you get out of the like, I don't wanna do this mindset.
So we use all of this because it's really,
Oh, we didn't say how does it serve the program. The other thing is to think about is why was this piece chosen? Why was this piece chosen? Does it speak, why is it in the program? Does it speak a message that isn't spoken in any other piece of music? Was it in fact chosen by our director because it helps us learn a skill that we haven't learned or that we've been struggling with? So asking a lot of questions and trying to connect with a piece of music, even if you don't like it, for all of the various reasons it could be there, is helpful.
all of this leads us to the thing that benefits all of us the most, which is rehearsal, which is the group element. These last two sections are very short. Thank you for all of your time. The group element of this is, and we talk about this all the time with my choirs, rehearsal is not the time to necessarily be learning music. Your director might have a different philosophy. Rehearsal is generally a time for the group to coalesce and learn their sound together. Practice is a time for us to learn our music at home. I was like, how do I truncate all of this today? And I came up with what this will be my new mnemonic for this section, which is listen, mark, purposeful, focus, and posture. And Gage, that's just a sentence. It's not a very good one either. However, those are my 5 sections that I'm looking at here. When you're in rehearsal, listening to everything that's going on around you and balancing to the chord as you hear it, sing your note at different volumes each time you sing through it, and see what sounds the best, because chords ring in different ways, with different relative intervals at different dynamics. So second is mark. We already went over this, you know this, mark your music. You noticed it's in every section of this book, mark your music. It's transformative. After you've marked your music, you can be really purposeful. I have a lot of singers, I think we all do, sometimes I will do it, I admit it, that don't pay attention when we're working with other parts. Oh, that's the basses. I'm a soprano, so I'm not gonna listen to what's happening with the basses. But knowing what the basses are doing will inform what you do when you get to that section as well. If you have if the director is told every section to crescendo from measure 34 to 36, and your section, the 4th section to sing, you know that should be the case. Except more often than not, we have to get told the same thing, right? More often than not, I as the director go, sopranos. Everyone else crescendo, please crescendo. But in a very compassionate way, I never that. So being very purposeful in how you're sitting there is really, really key to our rehearsal. Making sure that you are looking ahead in music is also really, really important. So if you're like, great, I got this section, or I don't sing for the next 16 measures, flip ahead and start singing through your music in your head. Audiation is one of the keys that is largely untapped in choral music and separates community groups from professional groups. The process of audiation is being able to hear your part and your pitch in your head and to sing it in your head. One of the things I'm working on challenging my groups with is singing, stopping singing, but the music doesn't stop. We continue working through it in our head, and then we resume and we pick it up, right? That's a really key skill to be able to pick up at any point in time, and it transforms the group. So, you're purposeful, you've marked your music, you've listened really well, you're fully focused, because it's really hard to be purposeful if you're not fully focused. That one's just easy for me. The last portion of this is posture.
Posture. How many of you sing sitting down during rehearsal?
I don't like to.
Right? Okay, so I don't like to either, because I find that when I'm sitting down, I eventually collapse. And all of my diaphragmatic support evaporates. I don't feel that I am as connected with my body. However, sometimes singing through a 2.5-hour rehearsal can be challenging if you're standing the entire time. So what I would encourage you to do is actually sit up. Don't put your back up against the chair, unless you are a very tall human who can do that. But sit up. Remember that you're supposed to be breathing diaphragmatically. So remember to take that big breath, that big back pressure breath into your back. And remember that connection. Everybody's done that line, right? You grab the invisible string and you pull up. Remember that while you're singing, and you'll see, like, choral singers, somebody's working with the basses, and they're whatever other part, and they're like this. And then the director will say, tenors, and the tenors will go immediately sit up. And then as they sing, they start to collapse, or they cross their legs. What happens when you cross your leg when you're singing?
Lose your foundation.
You lose it. You lose your foundation.
You in fact mess with your pelvic floor when you do that, and your pelvic floor has to move so that the viscera under your diaphragm can also move for a proper breath.
Exactly. So physically, the way to sing sitting in a chair, sitting straight up, your feet flat on the ground, your knees up, and your music, how do you hold your music?
With a music stand.
With a music stand. Or if you're gonna be holding your music and you have a handy dandy little strap,
Serving tray.
your folder is your serving tray. Think of it as you are serving your voice up on a silver platter. That's what you're doing, you're serving it. If you sing with your folder like this, you can't see the director, we can't see you, we can't hear your voice. Yes, Finn?
For the king himself.
Exactly, thank you.
What?
So, silver platter, you're using exactly like that. Yes, wonderful. All right, any questions? Mark?
I'm just sitting right now in this not particularly tall chair, and my feet really don't quite comfortably go flat on the ground already. And then, because I'm a tenor, and all those altos are right in front of me, I started bringing a cushion to sit on, because otherwise I cannot see the director at all. So now my feet are really not to the ground. And, you know, I don't really just want to bring, like, a dictionary and put my feet on top.
Right, exactly.
But sitting on the edge of your seat.
And that there is something that I can do.
You could also bring
a yoga block.
Like a triangle cushion.
A triangle cushion could work.
Because that'll help
Also,
you
yoga block
with
for your feet.
Yeah. Dave, you have like a wedge,
Like
a
a
wedge
wedge.
pillow, because then you can sit a little farther forward, and it moves your pelvis like down a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, the cushion that I'm sitting on?
Well, I don't know. I can't see.
No, the one that I am.
Yeah, the one that you're sitting on, that's what
Yeah.
you mean.
Oh,
I
yeah.
find
It's
that
triangle, but
a
it's
yoga
sort of
block
is.
on the
Yeah.
ground, so you put your feet on it,
It's
then at
like
least your
flat
feet
like
are
this
flat.
and then.
I also just sit
If you
very
can get one that's a wedge, there's
Yeah, if you sit on the edge of your seat,
Yeah,
then
yes.
your feet
And the
won't
yoga
touch
block
the
does
ground.
have 3 different heights. Yes. So you could put it up on its edge.
Yeah.
So there are some different accommodations you can do.
The other item,
Thank you.
and this is really key, whether you're making mistakes, whether it's been successful, whether you've had a hard day, no matter what you're doing in your music, our goal in rehearsal, in practice, and all the time making music is to sing with the least amount of tension possible. We always get in our own ways as humans. We always have so many things that are tied to our voices. And it's imperative that we relax in our music as much as possible. And while you're doing all of these things, you're like, Paige, you're asking me to relax, and you just told me for an hour and a half. I have to do all these things. Yes, you still have to be able to move past that and move forward as tension-free as possible. And I know we've got just one tiny section. There's not a lot left to the practice section, and then we have questions. And I think you are welcome to stay for a couple minutes afterwards to ask for questions. I'm saying as the person who has, one of the people that has to set stuff aside, so you don't have to like run away. The last portion of this is practice. We get asked how to effectively practice at home. It's a very boring slide because it's a very boring topic. Effective practice at home helps you to prepare for rehearsal, reinforce everything that you've learned, and ensures your steady progress through everything that you do. One of the first things you need to do is to set a goal. Whether that's your director saying work measure 3 through 15 of this song this week with the goal of blah, or whether it's you going, I'm struggling for these 8 measures in this song. Don't just aimlessly practice, please. You're not serving yourself, and it actually creates an often unhealthy, I hate practicing. Instead, set a goal, set a time. Don't practice for more than 10 to 20 minutes at a time. I know it's not always easy to get multiple chunks, but if you can, regular practice is so much healthier for us. Think of your brain like a sponge. So the music school I went to, I had 21 hours of coursework of just music every week. There was no time for anything else. 21 credit units. And the concept was still you only got to practice for 20 minutes because after 20 minutes you're not really taking on any of that information. You're not processing it the same way. But one of the things that Crystal really loves is accountability buddies. So setting goals and having accountability buddies.
Accountability buddies I find are very helpful for me specifically. I really will only practice in 10 to 15 minute chunks. My brain turns off after that point. It does not process any more information. However, I will find, especially if I'm in the soprano section, and you know, page 3 to 8 is really hard. But 3 to 8 is such, it's such a dense chunk. Like it's a chunk, and I'm having such a hard time. But I'm gonna message Irene and go, hey Irene, my goal today is I'm going to work on measures, or I'm gonna work on pages 3 to 6. I'm gonna work on 3 to 6 today, that's what I'm gonna do. And then at the end of the day, if Irene feels like it, she can be like, hey, how'd it go today? Or if I actually did what I was planning on doing, I can go, hey, I did it. I did it. It's a really helpful thing to be able to have an accountability buddy, especially with someone in your own section. It's also really helpful to go, now a lot of choirs have sectionals, a lot of choirs don't. But if you have another soprano friend, or another bass friend, or tenor friend, wherever, that you're like, hey, actually, I'm having a really hard time with this one song. Well, let's get together for a half an hour on Tuesday at 3 o'clock and go over that one part. Yes?
Sorry, what does the word sectionals mean?
Sectionals is when only a section, like only the basses get together and they only sing together. They typically go over problem areas that they're having, challenging areas that they're like, actually, page 3 of Harmonies Never Too Late, I've been having a heck of a time. And the sectionals will get together, that section will get together and have just a sectional. In the OCC, we strive to have 2 sectionals every season. So that's something that can be very helpful, but often it's very hard to get everyone in one section together in one spot at the exact same time, which is why accountability buddies are nice. You can even send your accountability buddy a video recording of you doing your goal. Be like, look, I got it. I finally got that transition, you know?
So there are so many things that we can go into, and I can keep this part really short. What you hear, which is where attention-free singing comes in, is not the same thing that everyone else hears. If you want to hear what everyone else hears when you're practicing, if you want to hear where those like foibles are, and you're like, I did such a good job, record yourself and listen to it. And go, oh, I actually could work on this other section that I'm not doing as well on right now. As I thought, slow down your music. As musicians, we often practice our music too fast because it's much easier to get through a tricky section fast than it is slow. If you don't have tools to do that, there are tools that I can refer you to. You can always ask. The last thing, and this one's really important, required its own slide. Oh no! Don't over-practice! Set your goals and stick to them, please. Over-practicing is really one of the killers of all of our education. So I really appreciate everything that you've done to be here. Yes.
I just want to add real quick, even if you feel like you don't have any time, I promise, literally 5 minutes helps so much. Like I've learned a super tricky section for doing 5 minutes a day for 1 week, and if I'm really, really, really pressed for time, I literally just listening to recordings of the music on my way to rehearsal is so much better than doing nothing.
Recordings are one of the most helpful things. Listen to great recordings of music to get it harmonically in your ear. When my singers are struggling, I ask them to listen to another group do it well, because the more familiar you are, the easier it gets. The last little bit about practice, and I'm really sorry to include this, because there might be questions about it. I firmly believe in building upon successful repetition. So if I have a 16 measure chunk, I'm going to divide it into 4 chunks of 4 measures each. I'm going to practice, that's fine. No, that's right.
Yeah.
I can do math. I'm going to practice this 4 until I feel really good, and then I'm going to add these 4 together. And if I start messing up again, I'll back up to 4. And then when these 8 are good, I'll build to 12, and I'll build to 16. If you don't have really good practice skills or you're building them, this is one of the easiest methods to approach. And if you have a choir that provides vocal tracks, this was really great. Write a time count. So if it's 1 minute and 12 seconds, so you go back, and then you know eventually that this is going to be 1 minute and 26 seconds, whatever it's going to be. But successive approximations are our goal.
When I first started, I had the bad habit of wanting to sing the entire song.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I knew other parts of the song and I feel good about it. But I was able to spend much less time practicing if I just found the parts that were a problem and just spent 3 minutes on that. And that actually applies to an incredible number of other things, including doing your taxes. Getting better at something. People with tendency to want to do the entire thing, but the optimal thing is to do a short thing, but it's the hard one.
Absolutely. I find that to be really true. I use this method a lot. I will sing the first 4 measures, and then I will add to that and just add 4 measure chunks. I will then, if I have enough time, go to the end of the piece, and I will do the last 4 measures, and then add the 4 measures before that.
Yes.
And I add the 4 measures before that. If I have 20 minutes to do one song, that is the way that I can get that song in my body and in my brain the fastest and with the least mistakes possible.
I prefer to do it actually from the end, partly because in choir rehearsal, so often you start from the beginning, and just we're so used to start from the beginning. If you always start from the beginning, you're gonna know the beginning really well, and you might not know the end as well. So personally, I like to do my additive practice from the back, and then also once you get to the measures you've already studied, you're like, oh yeah, I know this part, and it feels nice.
I think that a lot of this that is very important to note is that this is really about what works for you. We, as singers, have the only instrument that is individualized to you and your body. You are the person that knows your instrument the best. You are the only person, in fact, who can play this instrument, which is an incredible feeling of power. And really, looking at what works for you. If this doesn't work for you, fine. If it doesn't work for you to write BB, but it does work for you to put a star where you're supposed to take a breath, fine. Whatever works best for you and your brain and your instrument, because you are the only one who gets to play.
I really appreciate you all being here. We do have some time for questions. The session is officially over. We have time for questions, but we really appreciate your time and spending your Saturday morning. So thank you so much for being here.
Does anybody have any questions?
If you were in our shoes, what questions would you expect us to ask?
That's a great interview question.
I didn't get to in practice is if I was working through this and in this chunk I continued to mess up, you could isolate this chunk and you might go, but this chunk's really easy. And you look at what comes before it. Often what happens is we're not bridging, there's like a vowel issue. And I talk about this in the handbook as well, but often we have to look at what comes before the issue to solve the issue. And a lot of choral methods, it's not the item that's the problem, but what comes before it.
To respect everybody's time, if you have a question, please feel free to stay seated. But if you need to get going, or if you're just tired of sitting here and you need to make sure your feet aren't asleep, feel free to stand up, move around.
And
sign up for our email list if you want to be on it.